What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. A particular thank you to those of you who have signed up over at partoftheproblem.com. If you can, please make sure to do that. We do a members-only episode every week that you only get if you sign up, and you get to be part of the live chat and get the shows live and uncensored and ad-free. So there's a lot of perks. And if you can't do that, share the show. Give us I don't know. What do? I think you hit a
review,
bell.
Subscribe.
Yeah,
like
there's
this.
all types of things like that. If you see a bell, just hit it. If you see it, leave a comment, share it with a friend. Anyway, how are you today, Rob? Monday.
I'm doing well.
Getting the week started.
I've been out in Kansas City. It's the extended Porch tour. The next one's going to be out in California with shows in LA and Aguanga. And of course, you and I are back in Dallas and Fort Worth this weekend.
Ooh, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Getting back out to Hyenas, Dallas and Fort Worth. We always have a good time out there. ComicDaveSmith.com if you want to grab tickets. And of course, PORCHtour.com if you want to come see Rob out on the road. All right. So a lot of stuff going on. There was quite a bit of news has been developing with the Israel situation. Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, is in the United States of America. If you felt an unusual cold breeze this morning, that might have been old Bibi. He gave a speech at the United Nations a couple days ago. He just maybe an hour before we started recording this, he just arrived at the White House. I'd imagine him and Trump will do some type of press conference or something like that. So there'll probably be some stuff to talk about tomorrow on that front. But even already, there's a couple things that have really been kind of, dominating social media about his UN speech, his meeting with the influencers after, and all that stuff. So I figured we'd get into all of that stuff today. I got to say, and I'm curious to get your kind of meta feedback on this, Rob, but to start with my big picture take on all of it is I just, it's strange because obviously I'm somebody who's been, talking about this conflict a lot, particularly over the last couple of years. And, it's I don't know, I've been in a lot of debates and shows about the subject. I still find myself I'm blown away by how bad this PR war is going for Israel, by how bad they are, how their fundamental inability to grapple with the moment, let alone adjust to it. And, it feels more and more overwhelmingly I would compare it, not saying there's a one-to-one comparison, but just something about during the COVID insanity, if you remember, Rob, it wasn't that long. It was really 3 years that the nation was swept up in this COVID craziness before everyone just finally called it quits and stopped listening at all. And they had no choice but to roll it all back. But if you start from say March, April, May of 2020, it felt like it was me and you against the world. You know what I mean? I'm not saying there were good people who were on our side too, but you know what I'm saying? It felt like there was this group of us who were hey, we're against lockdowns and this is crazy. And the science doesn't actually justify, and against the censorship and the whole culture of conformity, of follow the science and turn your brain off and don't do your own research. And so you're as time started going on, it just started snowballing. More and more people just started breaking ranks with supporting the dumb COVID thing. Now, almost every one of your favorite, political pundit commentators was terrible on COVID at the beginning. Almost every one of them. There's a small group of people who were good on it the whole time. That's what, you'll find Ben Shapiro is saying, get the vaccine dopes or whatever he was calling people. And Jordan Peterson was talking about how he got the vaccine so that he could have his freedom back. And just so many of the people really, they failed the moment, but then they slowly started to get off of the sinking ship toward the end. And it started to become a thing by 2022 okay, all of the policies were like still in place, but we were like, yo, we're winning. Like we're winning the argument. And then by 2023, it was just like, yo, you better climb off this ledge if you were on it, because you'll never be respected again unless you do. And then a lot of people did, and a lot of people, I'm not even like trying to bash them. I'm kind of just saying what happened. There's a lot of people like Piers Morgan will tell you today that he's embarrassed over the stuff he was saying during COVID. Ben Shapiro will not defend his get the vaccine dopes. I'd imagine he won't. And I gotta say, I just feel like the same thing is happening with support for Israel. Like it's just like you're at this point where it's like, oh my God, at first there was a ragtag group of us who were against this thing. And then it just snowballed and has gotten to a point now where it's just like, wow, dude, they are really losing this. It reminds me, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comparison, but it reminds me of like Fauci, like where Netanyahu is now, where it's just like totally understood, just like as much of a consensus as you can get on anything. You can get this consensus. This guy is such a fucking liar. Like what a monster this guy is. And, like once it almost felt like with a lot of these guys, like Fauci, Cuomo, a lot of them, it was like once that stink got attached to them, they were never going to get it off. I don't know. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yeah, there's definitely a life cycle of these storylines and how long you can run them out. And so for COVID, when you were lying about having to stay in your home or having to get a vaccine, it's just there's only so much time that you can keep that story going for. And I guess Netanyahu has been preaching us on this, why this war needs to exist if you even want to call it a war. And 2 years later, I think people have seen enough images of kids being killed in Gaza, have seen enough of these storylines, and us sponsoring wars in other part of the world alone isn't popular. But then when it's going towards just whatever's going on in Gaza, that's particularly unpopular. And then when you start having that, if you're questioning it, you're being called an anti-Semite, or you just start seeing censorship in regards to a topic where you're like, I'm just talking my mind. All those things are a recipe for disaster for keeping support to your cause. Like there's only so much time that you can do these things for before everyone realizes what's going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it's, these things like, again, there's other examples you could look to, but just for example, if you remember, like there was the trans debate was like, so it's hard to even like, as I'm saying this, like really appreciate how it was only a few years ago that it was like you were taking your career in your hands if you started saying like, hey, I don't think we should trans 8-year-olds. Like, in fact, I think that's a little crazy. I don't think this should be taught to children. Like what? And now that's just like, it seems like the safest opinion in the world to have. Like, I can't even think of, I can't think of left wing shows or liberal shows. And I've done a decent amount of them over the years, but even like ones I haven't done, like, I can't picture one liberal or left-wing show that I would go on and say you shouldn't be transing kids and would even be prepared for a fight. I would just be prepared for everyone to agree with that right now. It just but it's in only a few years, it went from being a wildly controversial, and don't get me wrong, because a lot of these controversies are manufactured, but it went from being a wildly controversial idea to being a total consensus. As much of as you could get a consensus on just about anything, maybe not quite, but like an 80-20 issue for sure. And it's just things can move very quick, especially in this new world. And just I guess, on one level, the feeling about Netanyahu's UN speech is always just like how evil it is. But the thing that even like kind of overwhelmed that for me was just the feeling of like, oh man, this is getting so bad. Like this is the fact that Netanyahu's so out of touch. I mean, we could paint the picture for you here. Like I'm sure a bunch of you have already seen the clips. We'll play a couple of other clips, but essentially the entire UN walks out on him before he starts his speech. Most of the country's left. If you see, there's like, bird's eye pictures of it. The overwhelming majority of the room is empty seats, with the Israeli delegation cheering loudly for every word that he said, like, which is already just like the optics of it are not great. Not saying that proves anything one way or the other, but like the optics of this are bad. But like there is an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu from the International Criminal Court over war crimes. He is being widely accused in pretty much every nation on earth. There are loud voices with huge percentages of the population who agree with them, accusing him of being guilty of genocide, carrying out a genocide of a captive people. And he gets up there for this speech, Rob, and he starts like, oh, look here, let's play the one clip. What's the one clip we have here of I think the joke he made we have. Can we pull that up?
This is on
Suarez?
the pagers.
Yeah, that's right. Here we go. Was it just
you remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah, and believe me, they got the message. And thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground.
Yeah, that's who's
remember
cheering.
Those beepers?
Okay, so anyway, that's just look, dude, I'm just saying, and I understand you can say Hezbollah are terrorists or whatever. I mean, sure, like, by any definition, are they more terrorists than the IDF? No, but I mean, Hezbollah is essentially a government. I mean, they've been, I think, I think politically they've been in control of southern Lebanon for what, 20 years or something like that now? I mean, whatever. But just the idea, Rob, that you're like cracking jokes about the people your government kills in this environment seemed so profoundly out of touch. Like I could, like even watching it, I could, and Netanyahu's always like, he's never been, look, Netanyahu, he speaks very good English, much better English than your average Israeli. And that's part of the reason why he's been the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history. He's good at kind of working, an American crowd, but he's never been a particularly charismatic guy. He always has his little visual aids and his thing. It's like it's never like a great speech giver. But this, to me, I was just like, yo, people are accusing you of being the reincarnate of Adolf Hitler. They're accusing you of being the most evil person in the world, conducting a brutal genocide. And you're up here cracking jokes about the people your government's killed while you lecture everybody. And oh, by the way, on top of that, which is just something that nobody can ignore in this situation. And there's a fundamental disconnect here that like the Israelis just seem to not understand this. But look, it is one thing if the leader of a nation, like let's say the leader of Russia in the 20th century, whoever you want to pick, Gorbachev or Stalin or Khrushchev or whoever, like the leader of the Soviet Union, or let's say the leader of the United States of America, or the leader of but like Israel is a country the size of New Jersey who everybody knows is completely dependent on America to their survival. Like that, I mean, like it's just, we have to give them billions of dollars. They could not conduct any of their wars without American support. We also have to give billions of dollars to the Jordanians and the Egyptians and the Saudis. Like we have to bribe every country that's ever gone to war with Israel in the region in order to keep them not going to war with them. And like, then for you to turn around and be bragging about the devastation your country imposes, like you're not even self-sufficient. What are you talking about here? Sir, you're being accused of genocide and you're making wisecracks about the human beings that your government's killed? Like, what are you doing? I don't know. It's just so crazy to me.
And on that incident, it's not even all that clear to me that there weren't civilians that were killed in those attacks, as they
I think there were,
just in public places.
Yes. No, I think there were civilians who were injured and killed. I think like the ratio wasn't bad. It was mostly the people they wanted to get, but still, like there's just and even if you're just going to say those were the terrorists, it's like if again, just like in simple human terms, if you're like, if my policy, like my actions resulted in tens of thousands of dead children and people are furious about this, and then you get up there and I just start bragging about the bad guys I killed in this period of time, it's just very out of touch. And there's these other parts where, you know, and I do think this part of the reason why I compared it to you know, the COVID stuff or even the trans stuff is that, you know, there was something like I would say from our perspective, you know, what's the old saying, like how you make a fortune or how an empire falls apart or whatever, but where they go like slowly at first and then all at once. I think it was how did you go broke is what that came from, slowly at first and then all at once. You know, like with all of those things, at least from our perspective, Rob, right? That's how it happened, right? It's like slowly, little by little by little, you start like winning the argument, and then all of a sudden it's like like the floor just falls out, and it's just like, oh, that's it, it's over. You know, it's crazy how quickly it can happen. And part of the reason why I'm feeling this way about the thing, because the other big part of his speech was now he has to respond to the fact that the UK and France have both publicly come out in support of a Palestinian state. And so he has to respond to that and do a whole section about like how they won't shove a Palestinian state down our throat. Again, I think it's something that's really ballsy when you're not a self-sufficient country. But I will say, man, and this has always been the game. Like this has been true for my entire lifetime, and it's part of the reason why Israel only survived reputationally in a very controlled media environment. And it's because as soon as you're talking about a Palestinian state, the Zionists are losing the argument. As soon as that's the topic, you're losing the argument very badly for obvious reasons. I mean, I'll spell them out, but this is why in a Zionist controlled media environment, the questions are always going to be framing the issue around, does Israel have a right to exist? Do you condemn Hamas? What about October 7th? Like it's always going to be framed in this way. They don't want to start talking about a Palestinian state because there simply is it's an indefensible position for so many reasons. Like, look, it is just totally not accepted anywhere in the advanced world that a state is something that you get to choose whether or not you give a group of people. Like it's the obvious norm for civilization at this point, for post-Enlightenment Western civilization, is that essentially there's two options, right? Like you either allow people to create their own state, like a group had, or if you're forcing them to be incorporated into a state, well, then they're citizens with voting rights. That's the standard. You don't get to keep a group of people, say you can't have a government. In other words, we are your government, but you don't get to be a citizen or have voting rights within our system. Like no one does that. And so as soon as the conversation is like, well, we're not going to allow you to give the Palestinians a state in Gaza and the West Bank, you go, well, so wait, so what is it? Is it Israel? If it's Israel, then you're an apartheid state that's holding millions of people without citizenship. And if it's not Israel, why do you get to determine whether or not they have a state? Like even when he's like, oh, you want to reward, you know, Hamas with a state. People in Western civilization do not conceive of a state as something that is a reward. It's like oh, you want to reward somebody with the right to live or something like that. Like it's like that's not how anyone conceives of it. So as soon as this conversation starts, you're just already losing. There's no it's like, you know, and even the like that cop who I was arguing with the other day, that dummy, it was, you know, he doesn't know anything, but he's like 5 times they offered them a state. Like that's the talking point. It's not true, but that's the talking point. And it's like, what? So because you offered it once, you get to just take it off the table and like let's just say theoretically that was true, even though it's not. 5 times you've offered them a full state and they've said no every time. So what? Like if you had slaves and you went, I offered them their freedom 20 years ago and they turned it down. You go, wait, what? So you just get to keep them as slaves indefinitely? Like, no, it's not even something that should be offered. It's not yours to give. It's something that you should never infringe upon. You know what I mean? And before you anarchists start picking on me about that, I'm not actually saying that I'm just saying you can't rule over them with your state. You have to leave them to their own devices. And, probably they're not going to figure out Ancapistan. So a state is more likely the result of that. But anyway, I just found the whole thing, like the optics of it, the point of it, like it's not even like he doesn't even have like the wherewithal to make the tone of the speech be, listen, I've been accused of genocide by a lot of people, and as a Jewish person, like that hits home. That really hits home to be met with that accusation. And while I disagree with that, I think we've conducted this war in a fair way, blah, blah, blah. I hear your calls. And that's why today I'm announcing that we are going to 10x the amount of aid that's getting in. We're going to 10x the precaution. At this point, we've destroyed the entire Gaza Strip. We're going to really be careful about limiting civilian casualties going forward. Something, instead he's cracking jokes about the people he kills and lecturing everybody else about how Palestinians somehow don't deserve statehood. What group, Rob? What group of people in the context of modern society do you just go, they don't deserve statehood? It's just too, like, you're already losing the argument when you go down that path. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, one that is very near and dear to my heart. Of course, I'm talking about Body Brain Coffee. I've been drinking Body Brain Coffee for a couple weeks now. I love it. It's delicious. I feel great. And it is, of course, the company founded and run by my brother, Louis J. Gomez, who is really a big part of the reason why Part of the Problem exists and has existed for so many years. He's always been a backer of this show, and now he's made this amazing product, which genuinely everyone is raving about. It's really excellent. As you guys know, testosterone levels have been plummeting, and you need to do everything you can to get those things back up. This is a big part of why we're not as free a country as we should be, because the men are acting like women, and Body Brain Coffee is going to fix that. And now, with my promo code, you can get 20% off. Just go to bodybraincoffee.com, use the promo code DAVE20 and get 20% off your order right now. Guys, this project is very near and dear to my heart. As I said, we're on a mission here. We're going to blow this thing up, and we're going to make sure we do it with my promo code so I can hold that over Lewis's head for eternity. So make sure you go to bodybraincoffee.com and make sure you use the promo code DAVE20, and you'll get 20% off, and you get a delicious coffee with all types of stuff in it that's great for you. Tomcat Ali, ashwagandha, lion's mane. It's all going to make you feel energized without the crash. You're going to be healthier, you're going to feel better, and you're going to be drinking a delicious cup of coffee. Go check them out, bodybraincoffee.com, promo code DAVE20 for 20% off. All right, let's get back into the show.
Yeah, I guess at this point, the strongman and confidence game tactics just channels to people. Does this guy actually run our show, or why does he get away with this? And just speaking to the narrative changing, Macron was sitting down with Trump the other day and pointed out that the reason why I think it's an empty gesture, but the reason they're backing Palestinian state is because he said, war's been going on 2 years. You got just as much Hamas fighters as when you started. This isn't working. And one of the things I saw, which is really interesting, so, Trump usually just tells us, I've got the most fantastic solution. Don't worry, gives no details. This time he hasn't publicly put out the details, but apparently they got this 21-point plan, and the chatter is that Witkoff, Kushner, and all the Arab countries have had it. All of the Arab countries have apparently agreed to this deal, and one of the line items in this deal, which I was fascinated by, was amnesty for Hamas, and that if they swear to be peaceful, they will be allowed to stay in the region, which really undermines the one, hey, Hamas has to go, and two, we can never have peace with these people because they've sworn to our destruction. So if that piece of the deal remains in the deal, it undermines what you've heard from Israel for the last 20, 30 years.
Well, but particularly the last two. I mean, it's been their justification for this whole campaign is that we have to fight until the eradication of Hamas. And then they've kept saying it for the whole last year. We're almost there. The job's not quite done yet. There's still some Hamas here. So that would, I have a real tough time thinking that the Israelis are going to accept that, especially with what their attitude seems to be. Again, Rob, like as you pointed out there, it's like I should also make, that point should be made clear too, that like, okay, because it's not just the accusation is that you're committing a genocide. The accusation is also that you're like really kind of running the show here, or really puppeteering the United States of America. And instead of trying to dissuade anyone of that notion, I mean, we're about to play the next clip, which really is actually, I think, substantially more outrageous than even his speech at the UN. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
There might be a poison pill in the 21-point plan that I think the starting point is that they give up all the hostages, which is essentially saying you have to give up all your leverage and Hamas gets to no longer exist, but you can have amnesty. So it might just, and you never know with Trump when he just turns around 2 weeks later, like we saw with Zelensky, hey, war's got to be over, changing it to what do you need? Do you want Tomahawk missiles to go on the offensive?
Yeah, that's right. And it requires a lot to say like, hey, you put down your gun first, and then Israel will put down theirs.
But and also, there was rumor that Tony Blair is going to end up running the show over there, and there's going to be a big Elon Musk investment, which then also starts sounding like the goofy Riviera of the Middle East, and the Gazans are being thrown out. So, like, listen, it's early, and we don't know what's going on. But you did have that offhanded comment from Trump last week, basically saying, like, no on new settlement developments, like, we've had enough.
It was specifically on annexation of the West Bank.
Right.
When he was specifically asked of like, would you allow, and this is kind of something that was interesting to me, because first of all, I'm not the first one who's said this. I've heard other people like say this, but it's always at least been partially just conjecture. I mean, don't get me wrong, like they've increased settlement building on the West Bank, and settlement building on the West Bank has been, an ever-present, clearly intentional obstacle to the creation of a Palestinian state. That's essentially what it's all been designed to do. It's a slow-moving annexation, essentially. But a bunch of people I've heard say, or a few people I should say I've heard say, that like, I really wouldn't be surprised if Netanyahu tries to annex the West Bank at this point, like, and make this his legacy, make anything else than the obvious his legacy. I mean, at this point, it's really crazy, right? Like for people who follow this shit, the Netanyahu doctrine, the center of Benjamin Netanyahu, like for people who don't know the backstory of this guy, right? He was, aside from being like, as I've talked about many times, like the neoconservatives, kind of like partner in Israel. It was always the neocons and the Likudniks were joined at the hip. But aside from that, and I guess I don't focus on this as much, Rob, because me and you are Americans, and really the point of all this is we care about our country. That's, so like this is always coming from an American-centric point of view. But and you might know a bit about this, Rob, but, so like Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister of Israel in the 90s, who famously signed on to the Oslo Accords, who said, we're going to make a deal and give the Palestinians a state. Now, details aside from that, this was what he said publicly. And Netanyahu, this was very controversial in Israel, but Netanyahu, he was the chief opponent of this plan. He was like, screw you, you've sold us out. Dude, Netanyahu was do you know this detail, Rob, that Yitzhak Rabin's wife still hates Netanyahu to this day and blames him for the assassination of her husband? And there was somebody just I'd seen this like a long time ago. Someone just posted the interview clip, the video clip of her earlier today. I can't remember who I saw that from, but because they basically held this rally because they were protesting the Oslo Accords going through and giving the Palestinians their own state. And Netanyahu was one of the featured speakers there. And they had like pictures of Yitzhak Rabin in like a Nazi uniform. And then Netanyahu even walked in this parade where they had like a mock casket, like that they were carrying around. Like I'm saying, like, the conversation after Charlie Kirk where they're like, is the political rhetoric a little bit too heated? You couldn't imagine anything as heated as this political rhetoric, like in Israel, calling the prime minister a Nazi, walking around with his casket or a representation of what's supposed to be. And then a Netanyahu fan went and fucking murdered Yitzhak Rabin. Like that was his background story. And just like to have this, like, your whole career, the centerpiece of your doctrine was that we are going to thwart the creation of a Palestinian state. And you even decided to prop up Hamas in an effort to do that. And then you didn't protect your citizens on October 7th. And then you led what most of the world considers a genocide, which has completely alienated, Israel's reputation, just an absolute diplomatic nightmare for them. So that's his legacy as of now. So anyway, a bunch of us were just speculating. And I said on my last Rogan appearance that I was like, well, look, I'm not claiming to be any smarter than the goddamn Israelis, okay? And they know, on some level, they know the writing's on the wall. The younger generation will never support you the way the older generation did. And so what does that lead you to think? If you know that you're never going to have this level of unconditional support going forward, but you also have the Trump administration in right now, who is going to give you anything you want, I said it, they might try to annex the West Bank. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is just, it's kind of interesting that this question even gets asked to President Trump, because why are you even asking that question? This is just something I was speculating about. Like, it's not like I got any evidence that he's actually going to try to do the thing. Just kind of made sense to me. But Trump did, and I'm thankful for this, he did go on record pretty forcefully that he absolutely will not support that. Now, that being said, I got to see it to believe it. Like, if they actually tried to annex the West Bank, who knows? Who knows what would happen?
But I guess, I was wrong about it. I guess it was annexation. But I guess what's being channeled, at least from the Trump administration right now, is that they're pretty displeased with the attack that took place in Qatar, and that they're trying to rein in Netanyahu at the moment. And like I said, you never know with Trump and what it changes or whatnot, but that seems to be the look right now.
Yeah, in the in the great book, The Israel Lobby, the opening of the book starts out with like there's like a paragraph just basically about how they're like, I forget which year the book was written in, but they're like, we have a presidential election coming up next year, and it's too early to say who's going to win or lose. But, what we can guarantee is that there'll be fierce debates about healthcare and immigration and this or that. And there'll even be fierce debates about foreign policy, how many troops we should move into Iraq or what we should do with this or that. And he goes, but one thing that can be guaranteed is when the subject of Israel comes up, both candidates will completely agree, and they'll be tripping over themselves to see who can praise Israel more than the other one. And then that's how he opens the book. And then he gets into, why is this the dynamic in American politics, And, but it's a thing like that too, where, look, dude, Trump was obviously furious over their bombing of Iran after he called for a ceasefire. He obviously was not happy about them bombing Qatar, an ally of the United States of America. He clearly is not happy that the war is still continuing, and he's not happy about settlements and potential annexation of the West Bank. But it does just still lead to the question of, so when do you do something about that? When do you even pretend to do something about that? Well, this is the war that you're financing, after all. This is the country that you're financing, after all. Just kind of hard to miss that elephant in the room. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is My Patriot Supply. It is National Preparedness Month, and MyPatriotSupply.com has their National Preparedness Month sale on. It is really incredible. It's the perfect time to ask yourself questions like, how much food do you have on hand for emergencies? How would you get clean water if the tap went dry? What would you do if a storm knocked out the power for a week? If you're anything like me, these are questions that you're concerned with, and there's always some room for improvement on this stuff. But luckily, our friends at My Patriot Supply are making disaster preparedness easier and more affordable than ever by giving you over $1,500 worth of emergency food and preparedness gear for free. They've just launched their Preparedness Month Mega Kit. It includes a full year of emergency food, a water filtration system that can purify almost any water source, a solar backup generator, and a lot more. And here's the best part. If you go to mypatriotsupply.com/problem, you can get 90 preparedness essentials totaling over $1,500 absolutely free. Head over to mypatriotsupply.com/problem for full details of the offer. That's mypatriotsupply.com/problem. All right, let's get back into the show. All right, let's go to the clip. This is after the UN speech. A truly remarkable, a remarkable moment here. And this is Benjamin Netanyahu sitting down with like some content creators, so podcasters and stuff, people on the internet, and this is him sitting down with them, and they're openly discussing strategy. Let's take a listen.
Christian influencers. Okay. You said we talked about the woke right, and you said I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation.
Here, pause it for a second. I'm sorry, just already. Okay, so here's the first really fucking weird part of all of this, right? Is just kind of funny that like this woke right thing is like this has been an argument on Twitter that like I've gotten into with like James Lindsay and Konstantin Kassin, and it's just like it's wild to see Netanyahu just jumping onto the phrase. So number one, that's pretty weird. And by the way, it does a lot to back up my point that there's a reason why Netanyahu loves this talking point so much, because it's always the whole woke right thing has always just been a way to smear the anti-war right wingers, plain and simple. I was arguing a little bit on Twitter the other day with it. It is unbelievable how people like who are defending the position, they just like have to come up with this it's the shit we destroyed that James Lindsay was doing months ago. You come up with this crazy vague definition that essentially could apply to anyone. Like they'll be like, here's my definition of woke right: identitarians who focus on grievance politics and want to seize power for themselves. And you're like, dude, that definition applies to George Washington, Adolf Hitler, Rachel Maddow, and Benjamin Netanyahu. So like it's kind of a useless definition if it's so wide as to describe every political leader of all time and every political group of all time. Anyway, but so here Benjamin Netanyahu actually jumps on this term, and then he points out that some guy said, hey, they're not the woke right, they're the woke Reich. Get it? And then Benjamin Netanyahu goes, that's really brilliant when you think about it. You're like, it's brilliant. You thought it was brilliant to go, hey, Rob, I've got a crazy idea. This is going to blow your mind. Just the sheer genius that I'm going to come at you with right now. Let's call our political opponents Nazis.
No one's tried that.
Just came up with that off the top of my head. Dude, we're going to devastate them. We'll call them Nazis. Like, what the fuck? Wow. Really getting creative here, BB. I couldn't even believe he opened with that. But okay, it gets so much worse. Let's keep playing.
They're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're movies. But they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back.
Can we just pause for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know more on that storyline, because I know you and I haven't gotten a paycheck, and I would love to know.
Suarez, you can take the screen off when we're just talking. Perfect.
I would just love to know what evidence or what funding and how much funding exists for this anti-Israel storyline, and who the NGOs are. And, where do I fill out an application? Because I certainly haven't seen a paycheck. And I'd love to know,
Rob,
the balls of him, for him to be like, other people are manipulating storylines. And that's the issue.
there's look on a personal level, which I should probably lead with the issues that matter, not my own personal feelings, but on a personal level, you're like, what's a guy got to do to get an offer? Like, where are these Qataris? How many high profile debates and shows do I have to go on delivering these supposed Qatari talking points before somebody, all these NGOs with their vast amounts of money, Rob, and the governments with even more? When do they come a knocking?
Maybe even a bonus check at the end of the year, Hey, we know you didn't have to do any of this, but we appreciate your efforts.
It seems like the right thing to do, but regardless of that. Yeah, I mean, but then there's this fundamental problem that essentially all of the which seems to be a talking point of all of the Zionists on Twitter or whatever, and the people who are going down with this sinking ship. It seems they're like, oh, Qatari influence or something like that. The Tucker Qatari son and Qatari Owens or whatever, like that's what it is. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens were to believe are puppets of the Qataris. Now, a couple of the major problems they have here, right, is that, and it's funny, right, because they object so much that they'll tell you that it's an anti-Semitic trope, a blood libel, I've been informed, to say that Israel exercises any influence over our government. Yet they'll just turn around and say the same thing. Say, oh, no, it's Qatar is actually the one who's doing it. So all of a sudden, that's not a horrible, evil, hateful thing to say. Now it's acceptable. But you just, the reason this talking point isn't working, it's fairly obvious. And it's not even the fact that you never have to demonstrate any evidence of that. Like, we're all funded by Qatar and NGOs. Okay, does anyone have any evidence? Like, is there a paper trail of any of this? Please, somebody, let me see it. And so, no, you don't have to do. But the real issue you have isn't even that. Because, like, people get conspiratorial and they don't always need real evidence. You give them a narrative and some people jump on it, as you guys know well. The real issue you have is, like I said before, the U.S. government gives more aid to Israel than any other country in the world, by far. And enormously more if you start to count the wars that we fight on their behalf. If you start, then you're really getting into territory. And like I said before, if you count the foreign aid that we give to all their surrounding countries, which of course, Rob, is just more foreign aid to Israel, right? Like the $3 billion a year, or whatever it is that we give Egypt, and the billions that we give to Jordan, and all of this is still more for Israel. So when you we give so much unconditional military support, like we were saying a second ago, no matter how much they piss off Americans or our government or anything, we still support them. So just given that fact, how are you going to sell everybody on the fact that Hamas has rigged this whole system? You know what I mean? Like Qatar has rigged this whole system. It's just never going to work.
And now we're about to go to the scarier part where he starts talking about enacting his influence.
Yes, let's play the rest of this.
Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay, and you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are in social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important?
Can you pause on the TikTok one?
Sure. Yeah, but let's just before I want to hear your thoughts on TikTok because it's actually very interesting. But before we get to that, look, dude, I'm not being crazy here. Like, there is Benjamin Netanyahu has been accused of genocide, not just by like many people, but by a long list of genocide scholars, international humanitarian organizations, a case at the International Court of Justice. he's also had to deny, I believe at least twice publicly, that he was responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, we certainly have not been saying that he is, and I still stand by my original statements on all of that. Not seeing any reason to suspect that Israel did kill Charlie Kirk. But nonetheless, he's had to deny that accusation. And here he is. This is part of it, like so brazenly. Like you're in the, first of all, this should just never be allowed, like this to happen. The leader of a foreign country who is dependent on America gets to just come in here and talk about how he's working to swing the influence in his direction and start calling Americans Nazis for the crime of not supporting the policy of aiding him and his country. But to start using, I'm sorry, man, in this environment, like a couple weeks after Charlie Kirk's been killed, to start using all this terminology of we're in a new battle and we need new weapons of war and you know swords don't work anymore. We need drone bombs, and the real battle is on social media against the woke right. Like, dude, that is, I don't care if you, even if you're a supporter of Israel, even if you completely disagree with me on all of my takes on this conflict, if you just have a shred of goddamn integrity, a shred of loyalty to your country over foreign ones, you should just be like, yeah, dude, no, like no country who is dependent on us should start getting in here and game planning their strategy to ruin the Americans exercising their First Amendment rights, speaking up against support of your country. And that is just wild. I mean, I don't know how any reasonable person can oppose that. But then also just this, yeah, man, I'm sorry, that's pretty weird language to be using. And then, of course, he gets a little bit more specific. Now, again, Rob, if you were to go out and say that, like, oh, you know, the Trump administration is facilitating the sale of TikTok to like a pro-Israel billionaire who's going to be doing their bidding, you would be accused of a blood libel. That's like an anti-Semitic trope. Yet here, Benjamin Netanyahu can just say it. He just gives away the entire game. Anyway, here, go ahead. Your thoughts on the TikTok
Well, I mean,
stuff.
also, if you want to talk about censorship, it's a foreign government, I guess, lobbying or influencing the United States to take over social media platforms so that I guess they can remove the opinions that they don't want on the platform. There was a bit of an omission in going after TikTok that governments can't be doing data collection. Well, why? What is the concern of governments having all this information? And is it something that the United States government is doing? And is it really in my better interest that the United States, is
Right.
collecting all my data or peddling influence when a foreign government might be giving me information that's actually in my interest? I'm not saying that the CCP always does this. I'm just saying that there could be instances where the CCP is actually more aligned with my personal freedoms or information, and that's in letting me know, hey, maybe the Ukraine war is not a good idea, which might also be in their interest. But I'm just saying
Right.
there
Yeah,
could be
no.
propaganda points where a foreign government's interest is actually more truthful and more in line with my own. And now you got this scary storyline, and there's much bigger experts on this, but Larry Ellison, who owns Oracle, I guess is going to be taking over TikTok. He personally sends millions of dollars over to the IDF, which is a weird charitable contribution to make. I understand making a contribution to Israel, making a charitable contribution to the military is a little bit strange.
I'm just saying there are charities that help children with leukemia, and instead you chose to donate to like the biggest murderer of children. Yes, it's a bit.
Or I
it's
even
a
understand
strange
donating to
charity.
hospitals in Israel. I understand that. It's
Sure.
just different when you're donating funds specifically to the military. But then also, and this is where other people are much bigger story experts than I am, but I guess Oracle does have a history of, CIA funding from its onset and also engaging in data collection for the United States of America. So now you got Netanyahu behind closed doors. I don't know why he allowed this to be filmed, but, at least giving a nudge to, hey, it's really important to the Israeli government that we don't have free social media platforms, and TikTok was a big concern, and it looks like we figured out how to control TikTok. I
Yeah.
mean, forget talking about Jimmy Kimmel or censorship. You want a censorship story? This is the one to be talking about. And now he's about to
100%.
go start talking about Twitter.
Let's play the next part, and then we'll discuss it more.
X.
That's
Exactly. Very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight, okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends or those who could be our Jewish our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpoint? Yes.
Give direction. I think he means remove our freedom of speech. I think that's what he means.
I mean, what? Well, look, it after using these like I'm really trying to not be like, you know, uncharitable here, and I'm not trying to claim you said something you didn't say, but you're like, okay, so you just used a bunch of war metaphors and then said we got our guy to buy TikTok and we have a friend at X, Elon Musk, so we really got to reach out to him. Like, to do what?
To censor the internet.
Yeah, like, come on. I mean, what is the other plausible answer to this other than the fact that they'll do what they've been doing in the past, which I guess Elon Musk is not doing nearly as much of now, at least according to my Twitter feed. But certainly I know that TikTok was doing all types of things to pull down the pro-Palestinian, you know, anti-Israel videos and stuff like that were going so super viral all over the last few years. Now, I mean, I don't think it's been such a wave that I think there's no way to fight it completely, because it's just, you know, it's just the thing that everybody's, you know, the young people are all agreeing on. But like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude, you're talking about a foreign leader in the middle of, like, let's just be charitable and fair here, in the middle of the most controversial, you know, military policy in the world right now, a situation like a tragic, horrible situation where tens of thousands of children have been slaughtered and the entire Gaza Strip has been destroyed. And this person is dependent on America to back this policy. And they're coming over here openly talking about how they're going to manipulate our mediums of communication. I'm sorry, like, who's for this? As you said, Rob, you hit the nail on the head. How are you doing this on camera? How is this not, like, this seems like it should be a meeting that the kookiest anti-Israel nut is claiming happened, that you're like, I don't know, we don't really have like the minutes of the meeting or the transcript or anything. He didn't openly say we're trying to manipulate the American communication system. He didn't compare it to a war. Oh, wow. Oh, no, he did. He did all of that. I mean, it is really, it's wild. It's wild that this is on tape. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Kalshi. I've been telling you guys about them for a while. As you know, it's election season. The New York City mayor race is heating up. This is one that the entire nation is paying attention to. And right now, according to the Kalshi markets, Mamdani has an 82% chance of winning, up from 72% in June. Now, I love Kalshi for things like this. It's a betting market that you can go check out politics, sports, weather. People are betting on all of this stuff. Now, you can bet yourself on it, or you can just watch where the money's going. A lot of good information can be ascertained by learning what people are putting their money behind. So check them out. It's Kalshi.com. They have over 5 million users who trade on politics, culture, and even the weather, as I said. Kalshi.com, KALSHI.com. All right, let's get back into the show. You know, like, there's a tape of Netanyahu. I'd imagine many of you have probably seen it already by now. But there's a tape of Netanyahu where he's bragging about the poison pills that he put in the peace process, and that he was able to basically trick Bill Clinton into thinking, like, he's like, oh yeah, we'll give the Palestinians a state in the West Bank. They can control everything except for the important military zones. And I put into the agreement that we get to determine what the important military zones are. So I say all of Area C is a military zone, and blah blah blah. Like, he's bragging about how basically I've set it up so that I'll never be able to give the Palestinians a state. I tricked the Americans. And then he's openly just bragging about how ridiculous it is that he can move the Americans. He goes, 80% of them support us. We can control the whole thing. But he's secretly being recorded and he's speaking in Hebrew. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like how it's supposed to go. That, like, a kid, it's not clear what happens in the video because, like, you've seen it, Rob, but at one point, Bibi tells the kid to turn the camera off. And it's not clear whether, like, he messes up or he intentionally let it keep rolling. But that's the way these videos are supposed, not in English with a full camera set up there. It's wild. I wonder why they're hemorrhaging support. But I will say, it is pretty amazing, and we could have a little bit of fun with this one, Rob. It is pretty amazing what their plan of attack here actually is. You know, one of the things someone asked me about, academic agent. I went back and forth with him on Twitter a little bit. I'm not super familiar with him, but I saw one of his videos where he was saying nice things about me, and that's all it takes for me to like a person. But he was like, I was talking about this video, which we're about to play, and he was like, why are they so bad at this? Like, what do you think it is? And the answer I had was just, you know, and there's probably more to it than this, but I said that I think there's this general, like, atrophy that has really built up. Maybe built up is not the best way to define atrophy, but the opposite of built up, atrophy. But that it's really developed all across kind of like the corporate media, Hollywood, academia. And I think it's all of these institutions that had like monopolistic control just never had to really keep improving and keep getting better and keep, you know, whereas like those of us who are like critical of this stuff, we came up in the internet. Like our whole lives have been battling and you know, it's like, Rob, like you used to see when like there'd be like an old famous sitcom actor and he'd go do a stand-up set and it's just garbage, you know, it's just like terrible. And then there'll be like some young comic who's like, he's come up in the nightclubs every night. He's a killer. He's been doing rooms full of drunk people who don't know who he is, who don't care who he is. You know, this is like why it went so bad for Kramer when he tried to go do stand-up. You've been in an environment for 20 years where you have a warm-up guy, there's an applause sign, you're a celebrity, everyone's thrilled the second you enter the room. Kramer would just open the door and come into Jerry's apartment and the entire world is like, we love you, you're here. And now you go back into the trenches in a nightclub with some drunk guy who doesn't give a shit. It's like, be funny, Kramer, you know, and you're like, yeah, goddamn N-word, you know, like it just like didn't know what to do. Anyway, I just think there's this atrophy that's developed. Like they don't even know. They're so used to being able to bully people into submission that they're like, fuck, we can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. So it's just, let's try to bully them a different way. Let's try to bully. Anyway, this is, I believe, if I'm not getting, you know, I'm not sure. I apologize if I've gotten this wrong, but in my defense, they are also interchangeable. But when Max Blumenthal was on the show and he was talking about one of these like blonde chick influencer girls, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that's the dummy I debated on Piers Morgan. But that was a different one. And I think this is the dummy I debated on Piers Morgan. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I might have been right the first time. I might be right this time.
I can't believe that this isn't satire.
Dude.
If it's not, then this is on the level of what Jaguar did with its commercial or what Bud Light did with Dylan Mulvaney, that they are just talking to the wrong marketing people and spending way too much money on what I can tell you will only lose.
But look,
you think you're going to win over the supposed woke right, the right-wing people? You think they're going to win them over with this shit?
Or even think about this, right? The fucking the right wingers who aren't what you would call the woke right, okay, but they're still right wingers, right? Like they're still this. You're still talking about other right wingers who like this is what. But anyways, enough prefacing of it. But anyway, I do think there's something that's really just interesting and kind of revealing about all of this. But here, without further ado, let's play. This is the type of influence, the best influence that Israel can buy, right here for you. Let's take a look.
Imagine supporting people who start wars. just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you must see anti-Semites are stacking eviction notices, Jews are out here stacking up businesses.
Jews control all the industries. Maybe if you spent more time taking notes from successful people, you wouldn't have to spend your nights and weekends spreading hate from your anonymous account with an anime profile picture.
Do you work as hard as Jews? Do you network like Jews? No, because you're too busy cheering on a group of musty terrorists who smell like dirty earring backs. And if we're going to keep it real, you're really mad because your income is giving side hustle.
Period.
How you going to hate from outside, Shabbat? You can't even get in.
Imagine support.
So I guess the only question to ask is like, why do you guys want so badly to see another Holocaust? Like, why is that your mission in life? Wouldn't it be something you'd want to avoid? Like, what? I mean, could you just think of a more like, yeah, let's get a girl,
sassy gay guy to be a cunt to you.
Yeah, let's get the most vapid like child. These are people in their 30s, by the way. Like, first of all, let's get the most vapid, self-absorbed like people we can find. One of them will be a girl with a Star of David on around her neck. The other will be like the most insufferable, over the top black gay dude to start lecturing Americans about how you just hate the Jews because you're poor. We're just so much better than you. That's why. Okay. It's like, and you know, like, I don't know who this is for. Who it can't be. I don't know.
It's part of their gas them all campaign. That's what it is.
I mean, I can't imagine this appealing to any group, but I guess it's like someone who was like watches Sex in the City or something like that. But it's just the idea that anyone, and talk about, I mean, just completely misunderstanding also like the influencer thing, like completely misunderstanding what is going on the internet here and why it is that your support is collapsing. These are supposed to be two people. These are two human beings who have serious concerns on matters of public policy. Rob, is that what we're looking at here? Like, I'm not saying anybody, you got to be like a suit and tie, stuffy up guy or something, but these are actors. These are, and the most like vapid ones, not even the ones who take on like serious roles or enjoy making good films. Like the most, it's just so awful. Just so, I don't know, man. I don't like, also, by the way, I really am to some degree. I mean, no, look, I really am a libertarian in my spirit. Like, I don't really care if you're gay or not. I don't care at all who you have sex with. But I hate that. Whatever that is just like forget it being attached to who you have sex with. Just that personality trait is just the most obnoxious, self-absorbed, like, you know, infantile person that's sipping that. So it's like, well, I don't know. I just can't imagine. It's like you're in totality here, you're hemorrhaging support. You're at the end of your, you know, the end of the line here. Like, at least Fauci came out and said, no, I never recommended lockdowns. Like, okay, that was a bad lie. We weren't going to believe that. But your way to deal with this, Netanyahu, is to like crack jokes about the people you kill, lecture Americans who don't support you, call them Nazis, say you're going to war with them and that you're launching this big effort to control American communications, and then start putting shit like this out. That's the ace up your sleeve?
This has to be. This is the only thing that makes sense, is that this is to try and stir up real anti-Semitism so that they can go back to look at how anti-Semitic everyone is and pretend like it's not just an anti-Israel thing. And it's amazing to be validating tropes in your own propaganda where you're like, do you hate paying rent to a Jew? Well, maybe because it's you're a loser and you haven't figured out how to own a building.
Yeah, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that makes us all like Jews more.
Yeah, no, it does. Like, it does seem at this
And the
point.
we've already talked about this, but the religious state, the important Jewish state, is hiring cunty gay guys to preach at me about that I should just shut up and take it, having to pay a Jewish landlord.
Yeah. No, that'll resonate in the hood, I'm sure. That guy represents Black America if ever someone has. It's becoming a more and more plausible theory that this is actually intentional to drum up Jew hatred. It's like it's hard to find another unifying answer that does explain everything perfectly. Like, you know what I mean? And man, think about it. If it is that, what a risky game to play for the people who pretend to be so concerned about anti-Semitism, you know? What a risky game to play. All right, look, we're gonna end the show there. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Peace.